I'm Euro,
I'm Chris.
and this is Fork Bomb. Monday, April 24th, 2017. Episode 8, Learning About Gopher.
So what is Gopher? Gopher could be considered the predecessor to the modern web. It was popular before the World Wide Web, but only very briefly before, like by a matter of months. And it's still kept alive today by hobbyists through systems like the Floodgap public Gopher server and through things like the Overbuy project. I guess before we get into it, though, I should ask, did you ever use Gopher when you were younger, Euro?
No, not really. I had seen the Gopher links advertised. Interesting that I'm using the word advertised. We'll talk about that later. But I had seen the word the Gopher site advertised on various BBSs. So I knew of Gopher. I just wasn't. I'd never gone through one of the Gopher holes, and I'd never installed any protocol or anything like that to be able to navigate through Gopher space. So no, I haven't. How about you, Chris?
Nope. Like our other topics about technologies past, I don't have much nostalgia for them, but I feel like I missed out on a lot of stuff. So, like the Amiga and like BBSs, Gopher was on my list of things that I wanted to learn, and I was glad to see that it still has a small following and is still kept alive by a few diehards out there.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting that people are still keeping it. They're still keeping it around. Still functions, and even the search engines are still. The bots are still going out there and searching through Gopher space. So we wanted to say a little bit more about Gopher, but the thing is that the interesting thing is that both the first World Wide Web page and Gopher came on the same year, 1991, which is interesting. However, the World Wide Web wasn't popular at all at that time, and Gopher was catching traction. And actually, Tim Berners-Lee, he actually announced the first World Wide Web on Gopher space because of the rapid user base that Gopher was getting. So I thought that was pretty interesting how Gopher helped solidify the growth of the World Wide Web. I don't know if that was intended, but
no, we might not have the web without Gopher.
Right. It was. It definitely had its moment.
And in fact, Tim Berners-Lee had a hard time gaining traction with the World Wide Web. So without using Gopher as a launching pad. In fact, I think one of our previous guests, Gene McCooley, mentioned he learned about the World Wide Web by using Gopher.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's neat.
So what about its origins?
Gopher was created as a way to make accessing information on the internet more organized, more structured. See, back then it was kind of chaotic. You had FTP sites, and you had lots of FTP sites back then, and it was kind of hard to search through them. It was hard to even find them.
Right, there was no easy way to figure out which servers had what, and
that's right,
where the servers were, and Gopher was created as an answer to that problem.
Right, through Gopher, anybody could go online, jump through one of those Gopher holes, which I love saying that, and then find, you can do a search and find exactly what you need, versus just going online and that's it. You have no idea. You know what you want to do, but you have no idea how to get there. You don't know what FTP sites are available, nothing. You just know you're searching for something, and there's no search engine to help you. So good luck. And most of the time you would just dial in. You would just log in and hope you could find the FTP server you would need. Which at that point, I guess it would just give you the address, right?
In that article that we were reading on the Minnesota Post, I think it was, it said that it was the equivalent of knocking on someone's door and asking if you can walk off with their piano. Which is an odd analogy, but I thought it was funny.
Well, what if I don't have a piano? Oh, okay. Maybe the next person does. Try the next guy. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Gopher helped with that, and it was a great answer to that to that need.
And the way that it helped with that, which based on its central goal stated in its RFC, which stands for request for comment, is it's a file system like hierarchical arrangement. So they figured people are used to browsing files and folders, and that's how they set Gopher up, kind of as menus and submenus. And to create Gopher sites, it had a very simple syntax. I'm guessing more simple than HTML. I didn't really dig much into creating my own, but from what little I did see, it did look pretty easy.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're right about that simple syntax. I mean, and Gopher was also one of those systems that could be created quickly and very inexpensively, which actually, after doing a little bit of research about Gopher, it was interesting that the University of Minnesota was actually looking for money back then. I guess Gopher was so inexpensive that they needed to figure out a way to make some money out of it, and it just wasn't one of those viable options. And actually, after looks like there was an argument in a committee about what they were going to do with Gopher moving forward, because they only had 6 guys to support it, and they needed many more people to support this.
In fact, the University of Minnesota was against it to begin with.
Yes.
They were primarily oriented around mainframes. They wanted everything to be running on a mainframe. And when Mark McCahill and team wrote Gopher, they wrote the server on a consumer grade
decentralized
Macintosh. Yeah, it was made to be decentralized and federated, and it was outright rejected. In fact, he was told, "No, you can't work on Gopher anymore." So
I don't know if it was him or somebody else that threatened to quit, and so he spoke with one of the board and the council,
right?
And so they allowed him to kind of continue to pursue Gopher, because it was about to be killed before it really even started. I mean,
and so in response, they released it to the public, and after that, people started finding it and started getting in contact, saying with the University of Minnesota, saying, "Hey, this is great, but when is it going to be updated? When is it going to start getting more features?" And
imagine their surprise.
University of Minnesota was like, "We thought it was dead."
Right. So imagine their surprise when they're like, "What do you mean all these people are calling us and asking us when it's going to get updated?"
Oh, and side note, the first Mac that the first Gopher server was running on was called the Mother Gopher.
Yes, wasn't it it was in a Mac in a closet that they had. I believe it was an Apple II. Oh boy, CS.
It wasn't an Apple II. It was
different Mac, right?
It was an actual Macintosh.
Okay. I was thinking of something else. Something with like 10 Apple IIs networked together. Anyway, so yeah, what about the interface, Chris? What did you think about it when you were going through and?
I found it very, very simple. I believe you looked at it through the Overbuy project through a web browser. I did it through the Gopher command line utility. So in my case, I was on Linux. I just did apt-get install Gopher, ran Gopher, and it was already set up to what is that server's name? It was already set up to look at the
Was it FloodGap?
Yes, thank you, FloodGap. It was already set up to look at the public FloodGap server that was talking about this is Gopher, this is what Gopher does, and navigation was just up and down. Menus were numbered. Press enter, goes into a submenu. Press enter, goes into another submenu where there's text on it. It was very easy to get around and find stuff. Very fast too. And the reason that it was so intuitive is it's designed to be that way. It is a strictly enforced hierarchical structure. meaning it's enforced to be created like that. You can't create it in any other way. And it was so easy that, to quote the Mark McCahill's goal when he was creating it, it was so easy that even an English major could do it. Sorry to any English majors out there. But this
Sorry,
was
English majors.
This
isn't our quote.
This stemmed out of academia, bunch of computer scientists. So I guess they looked down on English majors in some way, shape, or form.
Right. So I used it too, using the through the Overbyte project. They have an extension on Firefox that I downloaded, and then it also led me to the Floodgap page, which made things very easy because Floodgap also has the link to Veronica 2, which is the search engine that I was using to find other Gopher sites. So it was incredibly easy to use. I mean, it's how should I put it? Menus that lead to other menus. That's pretty much how you could how you could define Gopher once you're in it. Just think about a menu that where you're ordering food, but there's no images, no pictures of the food. You just have a menu there, and you have a numbered list of items that you can order, and it has a description of each. That is what a Gopher site looks like. I did see some ASCII, some ASCII. I guess intro to the site, not full animated or anything like that, just like a nice little ASCII splash art, but that's about it as that goes. And actually, no CSS either, so there was no formatting except this very strict menu system, but there was no tables or anything like that. It was just plain text and links to go to other submenus. So no images, no CSS. No dynamic content. I didn't see anything where you could where you could click submit and do other things, and there was nothing that would pass one variable to another variable and then you would get an output. Nothing like that. So definitely no eBay, unless it was more like Craigslist, in that you would just see the text there and that's it. But one of the interesting things is that I was actually able to read Fido News. And I don't know if you remember, but when we were doing our BBS episode, we were able to get on FidoNet, which was that larger BBS network that was around, that connected all the BBSs together. So I was actually able to read Fido News through the Gopher site. Somebody had a link to it, and I thought that was neat. They just had various FidoNet posts, so I don't know if it was done automatically through some sort of bot that would go and just capture the text and put it up, or if it was done by somebody actually manually typing it into the site. Either way, I got to see the Fido News, FidoNet newsletter, Fido News.
That's pretty interesting. I did not get to that part. I should mention, when you said links, that those links are not sitting in the middle of a sentence like you're used to on a regular website. It's only just a single line. The whole line is the link. So that's the menu item. One link doesn't lead to some other page that leads to some other page. It's just you have a bit of text and then a numbered menu entry, and then a bit of text and then a numbered menu entry. And only those numbered menu entries that have their own line, that have their own space, actually take you somewhere else.
Yeah, it's different from the World Wide Web, that's for sure. It looks a little bit more primitive. It's simpler.
So I want to elaborate a little bit more on the search system. One thing that they wanted when they built Gopher was for it to be fully to be able to do full text searches. And there are 3 search engines of sorts built around Gopher: Archie, Veronica, and Jughead, which anyone old enough can see the theming there. Archie was made for searching for stuff based on basis of file names, so I'm guessing doing searches for specific files. For Veronica, it looks like it searches based on menu items. So for example, if I do a search for Unix and there is a menu link that has the word Unix in it, that it would return that. And Jughead, I'm not sure what Jughead is. The only description that I can find was Jughead is available at some Gopher sites and uses the menu items on a single Gopher menu as its database. I only tried Veronica, but I found it interesting that there were other search engines built for it as well.
Right. I only got a chance to try Veronica 2 as well. Actually, you know what? It's interesting that Veronica 2 is still active and indexing Gopher space. There's not that many servers out, but it's still out there scouring the internet for other Gopher sites. So
there's about 140 servers still active.
Right, which is actually down from what it used to be. I think it was 160 before in 2012, and then it went down to 140. Actually, Chris, we might be down to 130. I don't remember from my research. I don't remember where we were exactly at now, but it might have gone down a little bit. But the good thing is that overall it's increasing from what it used to be back in 1999. The thing about searching on Gopher is that it's not as intuitive to a native web user. So see, I'm used to using Google, and Google does that fantastic page rank system. So this is not something that I saw in Gopher space. It seemed like it would just pick up anything that had the word and would just put it up. So if it was on the subject of the site, it would bring it up, and it didn't really matter what order it brought it up in. Versus Google, where it does that relevancy with that page ranking system and how many times that word is actually in the page. So Gopher didn't really, or Veronica 2 didn't really do that. So you could end up potentially clicking on the first link and it might mention the word once. So I didn't really think it was as intuitive. So then the other thing, of course, there's not as many pages available as the World Wide Web. And one example is, so I just recently got a PS4 finally, and so I was curious, and I typed in PS4 in the Veronica 2 search box, and it returned one hit, just one. When you do it in Google, you type in PS4, you get tons and tons of hits. So I guess at least I should be thankful that I got one hit for PS4. So somebody out there wrote about that.
But that's because PS4 was in the menu entry. It didn't seem to be searching the full text of each page, space, hole. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what the official term is. I think it's Gopher space.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's definitely not the same. Another thing too that I noticed is some pages are not available, but they're displayed on the search engine. So maybe that server's down, but when it was doing the when the search bot was out there looking for Gopher Spaces, we can go with that. Gopher Spaces, it was on at the time, and now it's off. I don't know, but yeah, it would still result as a it would still put the name up. Downloading videos, music files, images, and all that stuff is pretty easy. You just click on a link and it would download it, but it would just download the file to your computer. There was no previews, nothing other than text that would tell you what the file was that you were going to download. And then you just click it, and then boom, it would just download it to your computer. So that's another one of those things that was interesting.
So to be fair, though, even the web back then still didn't have any images or previews.
Sure. Early web.
But speaking of the web, so the Gopher, as it stands now, is intended to coexist with the web. If some Gopher sites have links to web pages, and if you're using something like the Overbyte project, which lets you view a Gopher space just like any regular page in your browser, it'll leave the Gopher space and bring up that web page. So that's all client side, but server side, well, and client side too. They both require very few system resources. I mean, you can run it on a toaster. You can run it on anything that counts as a computer made in the past, 20 years. It'll run Gopher just fine, because it's all just plain text. It really hasn't evolved. And there's something kind of nice about that because the web now is extremely large and bloated, and I still can't believe a machine with 4 gigabytes of RAM barely has enough to run Chrome. That's still kind of, I don't know,
I blame it on
saddens
the
me.
advertisement.
Yeah.
All the ads.
But I think my favorite part about Gopher was browsing through Phlogs, Phlogs, kind of like blogs, but in Gopher spaces. And people maintain these even today, and just talk about their lives and stuff like that. I'll have a little bit more on that later.
Is it the same as a blog? As a web blog? It's just there's no no images, sorry?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of like a web diary, but not web. Gopher diary.
I guess I should have. I can mention this part now. We did have it for later, but with Phlogs, I saw people talking about their experiences learning how to code, them playing around with operating systems, food recipes, video games, and even one little corner, as seems to be the case with every hobbyist technology. There's always one thing that's talking about the Church of the Subgenius, which is a parody religion that's all about Bob Dobbs and Slack. But it's a funny thing, and that's neither here nor there. But I digress.
That's great. I'm gonna look that up.
Another thing that's really nice about Gopher is there are no ads and no commercials, and that's part of why the web won out. That was what really pushed it forward. Was like, hey, we're gonna be gung-ho about commercializing this one day, so money please.
Well, I can't imagine watching porn, looking at a porn site on Gopher. You know how everything runs on everything.
Every new technology.
Right. Every new technology is, powered by porn or something like that? Either way, I don't really see how Gopher could have helped there. And once the World Wide Web came out with images and everything, I think even the creators knew by then that it would die off. Gopher wouldn't succeed where the web could, and mostly because of images. And images could bring advertisement. Advertisement can bring porn, and so there you go.
Ergo, porn. But thankfully, these Gopher spaces are still actively maintained, so you have to give it up for the hobbyists there. It's because without them, we wouldn't have had this experience, and we wouldn't have learned what that piece of history was like. I think there was one other way that we did not cover for using Gopher, and if you don't have the Gopher command line utility, or you don't feel like installing a browser extension, there are also Gopher proxies, which you just put in a Gopher URL and it renders it as a web page. And FloodGap runs a public Gopher proxy, which we'll put in the show notes. Right.
So you don't even need a Gopher client in order to search these websites or Gopher spaces. You don't even need a client or anything. So I encourage everybody to at least look at it. It's an important part of the internet's history and computing history overall. So I encourage everyone to go out there and just look at it for yourself and see how it evolved and what people used back then, which wasn't really that long ago.
Do you mind if I talk about some of my favorite spots?
Go for it.
The Super Dimensional Fortress. I don't know if that's a Gopher server in and of itself or a Gopher space. I think it's a Gopher space running on the FloodGap server. But there you can get your own personal Gopher space and your own Unix shell account. I did sign up for for my own shell account with the intention of making my own Gopher space. I never actually did, but it was neat to see the shell account. It was running on a little NetBSD server out somewhere. I think it's running on some IBM PowerPC machine, if I'm not mistaken. And
how much did it cost you, Chris?
The what?
How much did it cost you?
Oh, nothing. It was free.
All right.
Completely free. I mean, but that's what Gopher's about, you know?
Right.
The Flogosphere we kind of already discussed, but I think that was my absolute favorite part. It's a place where people go and talk about what they did for the weekend or what they're learning about. And it should be mentioned that blogs today, there is a commenting aspect to it. Like people write a blog entry and then there's comments and then there's spam in the comments. There's no comments. People are doing this because they just enjoy it. They don't want to hear back from you. They don't care. They're just writing it in the hopes that somebody else reads it, but they don't need to know if somebody did. They're fine with that.
Interesting. No
I like
feedback.
That. And another thing that I found that was interesting was the admins for FloodGap managed to hook viewing of the server's logs and the server's temperature into Gopher itself. So there was one Gopher space that would just list the previous temperatures for the past hour or so, or just keep a running tail of the logs, which I guess is convenient for a Gopher admin just to use Gopher.
Temperatures for their machine or
for the servers itself.
The servers.
For the Gopher servers.
Very cool. I'm sure that's useful for him.
So what did you find interesting?
Actually, it was more in the history that I found interesting. There was some stuff that I had. I mentioned that I had searched for PS4. I tried searching for all kinds of stuff. I even typed in porn to see what would happen, and I got back some interesting blog posts of stories. So I guess fantasy stories.
For science, though. For science.
Sure, and it works well for that. So that was that. I just like more the history aspect of Gopher. Also, the decentralized nature was pretty neat. It kind of reminds me a little bit of peer-to-peer, as far as that portion where it's decentralized. But I really like the history. That was my favorite part. I do have some interesting tidbits about Gopher, and again going back to the history and maybe a little bit beyond. But so the creator, Mark McCahill, he was actually the one that coined the term "surf the internet" because he was thinking like I don't know if it was parasailing or something, but
he's a windsurfer.
Go ahead. What? He's
a windsurfer.
A windsurfer, right? He's a windsurfer, so he coined the term "surf the internet," and I thought that was great because we've all used that term at least once. So that was great. Another interesting thing is that there was actually a snapshot of Gopher Space as it was in 2007 that was going around BitTorrent and actually still available today. So
what do you mean by a snapshot?
Like I suppose that this torrent contains all of the Gopher pages and all of their content all in one file. Can you imagine doing that now with the World Wide Web?
That's like downloading the web.
Right.
The whole web.
The whole web. And you can download the entire Gopher space as it was in 2007.
Wow.
Yes, which is incredible. And actually, I wonder how big it is. I mean, it's text, and I'm sure it's compressed. So yeah. I can't imagine it being really, really big. No images. So
it's probably quite small.
Quite. As I mentioned before, Gopher has been experiencing a small growth. So there were more servers back I believe in 2012, but it's up from 2007, which in 2007 there were fewer than 100 Gopher spaces. And now we're up to what I think is 133 servers, which were indexed by Veronica 2. And so small growth, very slow growth, but I'm glad those hobbyists are keeping it around. That's fantastic. That's great. I'm super happy that we were able to go in there and actually see what it was instead of just reading up on it. We were actually able to experience it. So definitely thank you very much, hobbyists. Another interesting thing is that Gopher support was actually disabled in Internet Explorer. So it had it before, and it was disabled in version 5 and 6. There was a patch that was intended to reduce browser vulnerability. So completely killed it off there. And Internet Explorer being the largest browser, especially back then, that definitely had an impact on Gopher itself.
I bet that made the news.
Probably. I think
At
it
least
happened
tech
in
news.
2002. I think that's when
Yeah.
it was. But another interesting thing is that Gopher Space is actually reachable on mobile platforms. So Android, Apple. On the Apple side, you can use iGopher, which is a proprietary client to reach Gopher Space. And I'm not quite sure on Android yet, but I'm sure there's plenty of apps out there that you can use if you wanted to go through that to go through Gopher Space on your phone. So that's pretty neat too. So I guess at this point we should probably talk about what actually caused it to fail. And I know we mentioned it briefly about the no images and whatnot.
There's one thing that we did not mention. It was the dominant way to use the internet.
It was more popular than the World Wide Web at one point.
Like by leaps and bounds.
Right.
It was experiencing exponential growth. So when it fell, I mean it fell.
It felt pretty hard.
It fell far, it fell hard.
And the interesting thing about it is it didn't really take that long for it to fall. It only took a few years. The World Wide Web caught up. It caught up very fast, very quickly, and that was it. And then people started to use that instead. I'm gonna go back to blaming AOL for everything. So I blame AOL.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
Besides the no images portion of Gopher that almost single-handedly removed Gopher from its competition. Another thing too was faster modems. So faster modems came out. I think back then the World Wide Web was called the World Wide Wait, something like that.
Yep.
Because the modems were so slow. So rendering pages, web pages with images was very slow. But then web modems started getting faster, and they started. Those modems were included with machines. Some of their modems were built in, and they came built in with laptops and whatnot. So the World Wide Web all of a sudden got faster, and images could be loaded faster, and that pretty much killed Gopher because, as we all know, you need to load those images faster. So there was no need for text only anymore. And the interesting thing is that there are web pages that are text only. So that was something else that that websites could contain text only pages.
That and as we mentioned previously, the web was advertised on Gopher. People learned about the web through Gopher.
Right.
So that definitely contributed. Its popularity contributed to its downfall.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. I mean, I don't know what the world would be like. It'd be actually interesting to do one of these episodes with what would the world be like if Gopher was the only thing around. But I think we're better off with the web.
Maybe. It would have evolved. We would have eventually had images. We would have eventually had commercialization. But maybe it would be more structured, easier to use. Maybe it would be more efficient today than the current web is.
But what about the Flash intros, the 5-minute ones?
We will still have those somehow.
Interesting. Wouldn't that kind of break Gopher Space though? And if you had all of these different dynamics, if you added all that to Gopher Space, wouldn't that kind of defeat the purpose? Wouldn't we just call it the web?
Probably wouldn't call it the web, but we'd certainly call it something. I don't know. Maybe it would have never achieved the critical mass that the web gained.
Sure.
It's hard to say.
Another one of those things that the web needs is constant. What about cybersecurity? I wonder if that would be an issue now with Gopher.
It depends on what we do with it. Every new feature is a new vulnerability. The more complex it becomes, the more insecure it becomes.
Right. PayPal and Gopher Space.
I mean, the day we got the ability to send information to websites, then that became sending passwords and credit cards, and so that's when we really started having problems.
Right.
With the web security wise.
I guess the Gopher Space is pretty secure, mostly because there isn't that much interactivity with it.
Right. It's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
There won't be any image file. I mean, the worst that can happen is you can intentionally download and run something.
Right.
That's about it.
That's about it. And that something you download could be malicious. That's about it, though.
There's There's something nice about the plain text experience, though, especially from a hobbyist perspective, because the content is, I don't know, it's there's much more to explore. There's much more that's genuinely interesting, much less cruft to look through. You don't know what you're looking for, but you're gonna find something, and that something won't be an ad. That something won't be a fake download button. That something won't be a listicle.
No surveys you had to fill out.
Right. It's all actual content.
Right. I almost felt like I was watching PBS when I was on Gopher Space. No commercials.
Yeah.
Not as elegant as one of these commercial channels like CBS and whatnot, but still, it was good.
I don't think it ever expanded past those 6 guys either, did it? As far as the creators of it.
Yeah, I think it died after that. Wasn't the staff not able to provide timely updates? That's another thing that led to the downfall. No updates.
People were asking, when is it going to have this? When is it going to have that? And they're all,
right.
We're 6 guys. Come on.
Right. They were just trying to keep it together.
And they had jobs.
So this wasn't even their primary thing.
Right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our look at Gopher.
I like learning about Gopher. It's interesting, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it now more than I did before. I just knew that it existed before, didn't know anything about it. So I definitely learned to appreciate it.
Me too. It wasn't quite as fun as, learning about the Amiga. But I mean, there was a lot of gee whiz bang there. But I don't know. This was like watching an interesting documentary where you walk away knowing more than you did before.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I feel about it too. It was good, and I'm glad we were able to talk about it.
Well, shall we wrap it up then?
Yep. So this concludes our show. Actually, Chris, we should probably let people know where they can reach us if they wanted to discuss some of our topics, or if they had any ideas of something that we should talk about.
That's right. We often forget about that.
Right.
You can contact us through email at forkbombpodcast@gmail.com. I believe you know about the Twitter handles and Facebook pages or page.
Yep. Fork Bomb Podcast. Just type in Fork Bomb. You can type in Fork Bomb Technology and other nerdy stuff on Facebook, or probably just Fork Bomb. You'll be able to find us. It has it's the first page that comes up. So you can type Fork Bomb on Facebook, and you can also find us on Twitter if you type in Fork Bomb Podcast. So we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to get some feedback on the show, and any ideas that you guys may have about any upcoming episodes. So if you guys would like to be a guest on our show, we can arrange it. So definitely would like to hear from you.
Yes, definitely. Or if there's any place where we were in error, would love to hear about that too.
Yes, please.
Well, that concludes episode 8. As always, thank you, Euro. This was fun.
Thanks, Chris.
Good night.
Good night.